Well, good morning, everyone. Friday morning here in Sydney, but it's Thursday afternoon in Canada, isn't it, Jan?
It is.
Yes, Darren Saul here, your host of Playing with Perspective, the suspended animation podcast. I have the lovely Jan Janzen joining us from Canada. Good morning, Jan.
Good afternoon, Darren.
I like that. And we're going to be chatting today about six figures is the new minimum wage. I love it. Now, Jan has been an entrepreneur for 40 years. She has bought a home cleaning business franchise at 19, and since then has been a serial entrepreneur, having businesses in a wide range of industries. Today, she is passionate about helping women with their relationship to selling and money, particularly that tough money part of the conversation. She coaches on money using sacred money archetypes and is an advocate of the empowerment of women through financial freedom. As I mentioned, her tagline is "Six figures is the new minimum wage." Love it. Jan, welcome this morning and this afternoon for you in Canada.
It's wonderful to be here, Darren. Thank you so much for having me.
Ah, my pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show. So I'd love to get into it. I mean, tell us a bit more about you, maybe something that I haven't really covered in the intro.
Well, I live on 20 acres in British Columbia, Canada, but for 9 years, I actually traveled the world. I lived for 9 years out of 2 suitcases.
Wow.
And I traveled, I took my business on the road, and it was an incredible 9 years. It changed my life more than I think just about anything I've ever done. It was an experience I will never forget.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually is what has propelled me into doing what I'm doing now.
How amazing. I'd love to get into learning and hearing some of those stories from your travel, but we'll have to leave that for another time.
Yeah.
But Jan, I love your tagline, "Six figures is the new minimum wage." Tell us how you came up with that. What prompted that? What inspired that?
You know, Darren, it actually starts with the traveling. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
I just spent most of my time in developing countries. I didn't go to developed countries. I spent my time in developing countries. So, for example, I lived in rural El Salvador for 4 months. I lived in 5 cities in Mexico. I lived in Costa Rica. I lived in Panama. I was in the Philippines, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia.
Wow.
So it was really countries where I saw a tremendous amount of poverty and a tremendous amount of suffering
Right.
of women, animals, children, the environment. People say, why did you stop traveling? And honestly, I just couldn't take any more suffering.
Really?
I knew I had to come back to Canada, and then I knew I needed to do something about it. So what happened is that, it took me a few years to get settled, because living out of suitcases for 9 years takes a while to get your life back in order.
Definitely.
But once I did, it was kind of like, what do I want to do when I grow up, right? Like, what do I want to be? And so I realized that I wanted to empower women. And I realized that I really needed to change the financial situation of women in developed countries so we could have a massive impact in changing the lives of women in developing countries. And when I came back to Canada, I was kind of horrified, because so many of my friends are, at retirement age,
Yeah.
and they're not the least bit prepared for retirement. And I'm like, what are you guys going to do? Like, are we all going to be Walmart door greeters at 80? Like, what are you thinking?
That's right.
And it's pretty scary, because women entrepreneurs in Canada earn $65,000 less than a male entrepreneur here.
Is that right?
Isn't that horrific?
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And 1/3 of Canadians do not have any money saved for retirement. Now, we're talking about one of the most incredible countries, most abundant, prosperous countries in the world, and our stats are frightening. So I realized that when I started to talk to women, that they were still thinking $5,000 a month Canadian was enough.
Right.
And it's not. That's fine if you want to live in, Timbuktu, but it isn't living in Canada. So one day, when having this conversation, literally out of my mouth came, and 6 figures is the new minimum wage. And I think the whole room kind of stopped, because it was the first time I had ever heard it.
Wow.
And people kind of went, oh, and I kind of went, oh.
I'll take that.
And that's how Six Figures is a New Minimum Wage was born.
I love it. Absolutely. Best tagline. So cool. I mean, and obviously you focus on working with women mainly. You don't really work with other people, just women.
Well, I love men too, but there's a certain thing that I have with women entrepreneurs because I just think that they're going to be the ones that change the world.
Great.
Sorry.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. So, I mean, why do you think women have such a tough time with that money part of the conversation?
When I went to do the research, I mean, that's a great question. And I think it's a question everybody should be asking, like, why do women have such a hard time? And I found out several reasons. First of all, most of the sales training is done in corporate. Like, it's really hard for an entrepreneur to find sales training. Yeah. So most of the training is done in corporate. So if you've never been in corporate, like, where do you get training?
That's
right?
Good point.
Okay. So that was a tough one. Then a lot of training is done by men. Like a lot of the books, you think of so many of the sales trainers were male. Yep. And consequently, even the languaging around sales is so masculine. I mean, we talk about prospects and tripwires and closing and filling the pipeline and targets. I mean, I feel like we're going hunting, not, developing a relationship.
That's very true.
And so it's uncomfortable. And then women have never really been raised in an environment, for the most part, where they learned to value their worth, to value what they bring to the table in a business. Yep. And so when it comes to that money part and stating what they want, they often discount, or they drop the price, or they just avoid it completely. And you can't run a business that way.
And it kind of, what comes to me as well is, if you could take this all the way back to evolution and nature. Really, men are the hunter-gatherers, as you mentioned. So we're used to, looking after that, going in for the kill. Whereas women are nurturers, they're relationship builders. They're probably better than men at, creating relationships that are longer lasting. But when it comes to asking for money, they kind of shy away from that a little bit.
Well, it's funny, Darren, because there's a company here, I think it's in the US, called Gong. And what they do is they have recorded millions of hours of sales conversations. And believe it or not, women outsell men by 11%.
There you go.
Wow. However, what's funny is we apparently do it all wrong. Like, we interrupt too much, we talk too much, it's just, we break all the rules, and yet we still outsell them by 11%. But it may be that we outsell them because we listen better and we are more intuitive, but we aren't charging enough, right? So it's still, the money part is still the tough one, right?
It's setting those expectations at the beginning. That's where women probably tend to find, it more difficult than men, possibly.
Yes. It starts at the very beginning. I mean, it starts with how you set yourself up in your business, how you see your product or service, then how you're marketing it. I mean, it's a comprehensive, it's business. Without sales, we don't have business, right?
Absolutely. And for everybody out there, obviously we're just generalizing here. There's obviously some men that are not as good as women, and some women that are better than men asking for money. So we're just talking very generally, but obviously this is, the fruit of a lot of research that Jan has done over the years as well. So then what do you think we can do to help women, understand that concept a little better and make it a bit easier to overcome that barrier?
I think one of the big things that I teach in my programs, Darren, is that, first of all, to value what they have. So that's a huge part of it, because a lot of women weren't raised with that belief. I mean, my mother, I remember once said to me when I read her a testimonial, "Jan, be careful, your halo is slipping, it will choke you." Right? That's my mother.
I like it.
So lots of times, even we weren't brought up in a supportive environment. So that's a tough one. So my whole thing is about raising women's confidence, but then also just reframing the whole sales conversation, because we naturally do it well if we would just stop and think about, what are we trying to do, which is we are trying to solve a problem. That's it. That's all.
Simple as that. And so then I'd love to get into more about how you actually work, who you work with, what's the process involved for taking someone from A to Z and making them more comfortable with that part of the conversation and success in general.
Well, a lot of people start with me by taking my Sacred Money Archetypes assessment. So it's an online assessment. It takes less than 10 minutes, but our archetypes are the blueprint of our soul. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to change the hair color. I'm going to go buy a new dress. I mean, this is who we are at a DNA and cellular level, at a soul level. You don't change these.
Yep.
And there's 8 money archetypes that I work with.
Awesome.
So once someone's done an assessment, then they have an opportunity to book a free consultation with me. I do a reading with them. I have beautiful, beautiful cards that, I use.
Lovely.
And so then I show them where there could be some friction. So for example, if one is a nurturer, which a lot of women are, right? You talked about that.
Yep.
And then the other one is the accumulator, let's say, which is the banker.
Yep.
So you've got the nurturer on this side going, give it away, give it away. And this accumulator over here is going, no, you got to save it, right? And so it causes this huge friction. And also a woman can feel like she's almost like torn apart. She just doesn't know. Do you listen here? Do you listen there? Like you don't know what to do. Yeah. And consequently, once they understand their archetypes, I work with them to make sure that they're really optimizing the strengths, minimizing the weaknesses, and then we can see exactly, do you want to work with me privately? Do you want to go into one of my programs?
Awesome. I mean, can we go into those archetypes a little more? Because that's fascinating. What are the 8 archetypes?
Well, okay. So we've got the connector. The connector is all about relationships, right? Monies doesn't really matter. It's just about relationships. Accumulator is the banker. The nurturer is, I call them the ones that are selflessly generous.
Yep.
The maverick, which is my first archetype, is an inner rebel with a cause. So, I'm the one that stamps my feet and, I'm going to do it and takes risks, right? Then we've got the ruler, who's the empire builder. So these are often the ones who are really looking to build that empire, that business. They see a big picture.
Yep.
And then we have the alchemist, which is about positive change, being an idealist. They're the ones that transform ideas into financial success.
Wow.
The celebrity is all about impact and recognition. So they're the ones that, they want to make sure that they look good, right?
Yeah.
And then we've got the romantic, which the romantic wants to spend the money on things because they like that kind of lifestyle. They like that feel good. I deserve it. I worked hard this week. I deserve it.
Yep.
So when you take all those together, and I work primarily with the top 3, it really helps you to see how to manage your life better and how to manage your money situations better.
Gotcha. And so is everybody a strong combination of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? How does that work?
It can be, we all have them. We have all of them. So it's just is where they are. And sometimes we have a tie, and I know how to break the tie, so we know first, second and third. The women have absolutely loved it. And then I worked with a man the other day, and then he did it, and then he got his wife on it, and then I showed them where there could be friction in their relationships and stuff like that. And that was pretty fun. Like it was fun for me, and it was fun for them.
I love it. And so these really are also fitting for men. Like these archetypes also classify men.
Absolutely.
As well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah. All right. And how did you come up with these? Is this a lot of research? Or
it's actually, I'm a certified Sacred Money Archetype coach. It was a woman by the name of Kendall Summerhawk who she says she was downloaded this information. So however you want to interpret that. And it's been taught to thousands and thousands of people around the world. And it is uncannily accurate. Like when I do a reading with people, they're kind of looking at me like, are you in my wallet? Have you been looking at my bank book? Like, are you in my bedroom? And how do you know this stuff?
That's fascinating.
It's wild. Yeah. It's good.
And so obviously at the beginning, you do a bit of an assessment to try and work out where they predominantly
They do the assessment online.
Oh, they do the
assessment online. Yeah.
Gotcha.
They get the results. I get the results. They book an appointment and we have a chat.
Beautiful. And then to coach someone through that process or that transformation process, does it take a few sessions or just one session, or how does that work?
Well, people can decide what they want to do. Like right now, I've got women in a 3-week program called You're Worth 6 Figures and More, which is all about building the self-esteem and the confidence in themselves, which was based on the archetypes. And then looking at how they're marketing what they sell to their clients, because again, they often minimize the impact. And then we're creating a 6-figure blueprint. So that's one of the courses. I have another, course on Sell Like a Queen, where we go through the whole sales process, intimately. I can do a whole thing on their money story. So it just depends, and different people want to go into different depths, and depending on whether or not they have a business or starting a business or a well-established business, that changes things too.
Okay. Fascinating. That's really interesting. And obviously throughout one's life, you can also, those ratios can probably change as well, depending on where you're at in your life. Or do you have an inherent predominant classification or archetype?
I would say you have a predominant, like I've been a maverick since I was, I'm sure I came out of the womb. I'm at 17. I got on a bus and moved across the country by myself. I mean, that's a maverick. Okay.
Definitely.
I've always taken risks. I bought a franchise at 19. I mean, who does that? Right. I took my healing business on the road for 9 years. I mean, those are maverick. I've always been a maverick. I always will be a maverick. Okay. So
it's very much how you are as well, your personality.
Yeah. It's pretty much how you are. A nurturer is always going to be a nurturer.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Very interesting. I mean, this stuff's fascinating. I mean, I'd love to hear an example of, maybe not mentioning names, of course, remaining confidential, but describe a situation in what someone came to you, what classification they were, what archetype they were, how you helped them along, and what were the results? How did that transpire? I'd love to hear a story about that.
So, for example, I worked with a woman who, she was a nurturer. Yeah. And, and then on the other side, she was a celebrity. Okay. So the celebrity is all about spending the money on herself and then also giving it away. So you've got a real problem here, because it means
that's quite conflicting, isn't it? It's
very conflicting
relationship. Yeah.
Right. Because then, who does it go to? The point is, it's always going out. Right. Because it doesn't matter if it's with the nurturer giving it away, or they can be spending it on themselves. Right. Gotcha. Yeah. So by helping her to realize that she had to create a money plan, which for a nurturer and a celebrity, that's a tough one, right? It's like but it has to happen. Like that is a more challenging one, because there isn't a strong archetype there about saving money or making money, right? It's about spending money. Okay? Yeah. And so by really showing her how to create the bank account that was literally nicknamed the nurturer, and then nicknamed the celebrity. So she could then know that when she earned money, she could put a certain percentage into the nurture and feel all good and warm and fuzzy when she got to give it away. And then have it in the celebrity, where she would feel awesome and realize that she could go and spend that money. It was the, manicure, the pedicure, or the, the Prada, bag or whatever. Right. And by just doing that, she came into control more of her finances, right? So that it was really more, she didn't feel so out of depth all the time, right? And completely overwhelmed by this. And now is starting to pay off debt, save money, and, get a handle on her finances.
What a cool idea. I like that. And so would you say that you said, 10% in one, 10% in the other, and 80% savings? Or how did you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they can decide, right? So they may say, well, I want to give 10% away. And it depends. Like if it was celebrity as the top one, probably the 10% would go into the Prada bag one, but if it was, the first one was the nurturer, then the 10% would probably go there. Gotcha. But the thing is that it is a way of letting them have full reign with those archetypes, because you're not going to change
those natural archetypes.
Right. You can't change that. Yeah. But it also then doesn't have them drowning in debt and also feeling guilty, because there's nothing worse than spending money and feeling awful about it.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, because once you've identified why you do certain things, why you elicit certain behaviors, you're more self-aware, and you can actually start to control those behaviors. Whereas if you never really find out, you're always just wondering, where's my money going?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where, when I speak to them, and I know these archetypes so well, I speak to them and they kind of go, Wow.
Wow. How
Like
did you know?
it's so bang on that it's, I don't know if you use that expression in Australia, but it means we're like, absolutely there. We're just there. Like it's so in their face that it's like they can't ignore it. Right. And it's been fun because I think that the more we can learn about ourselves, then the better it's and the easier it is to work with our good points, our idiosyncrasies, our strengths, our weaknesses.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm going to have to do one of these tests. I'd love to find
You
out.
are, absolutely.
And so then, obviously, how long did it take you to get her to a point where she was felt like she was more in control and she was starting to save?
Well, it happens almost immediately because when they take action,
Yeah.
then, and they earn money, then it starts to go into those accounts and it feels good. Like it feels good to be in control. So this isn't something that's going to be 6 months or, a year from now. You can literally start to make changes immediately.
Gotcha, gotcha. And which would you say are the two most difficult, conflicting archetypes to work with?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah,
They all have strengths and they all have weaknesses. It's kind of like saying, what's your favorite child? I mean, you can't
that's true.
do that, right? But there's ones that are more towards building a business, like I'm a maverick and a ruler and an accumulator.
Yeah.
And then I'm a nurturer, right? So I'm about taking the risks and then building the business, saving the money, being frugal, accumulators love a deal, right? So, they get excited when their fridge is empty.
So those two in combination actually work really well, don't they?
It's a really dynamite combination. Yeah, it is.
Because you're trying to build something and you're also finding that you can save as well to make sure that you achieve what you want to build.
Plus, because I'm a maverick first, I'm a risk taker. I will invest. And what I've always done in my entire life of 40 years of being an entrepreneur is I've always invested in myself. So I'm always learning. I'm always taking courses. And the other funny thing about the maverick is, and the accumulator is they're often, they have secrets. So like my husband oftentimes does not know what course I've just invested in until I can tell him that I've earned back all the money, right, that I invested in.
Right. So you have a separate bank account especially for you and nobody.
Oh yeah, no, I run my own business. I got my own stuff going on. And then I say, oh, by the way, honey, I just wanted to tell you what's been going on for the last 3 months and why you've hardly seen me, because I've been doing this and this and this, and it cost this, but I earned this.
I love it. And this actually brings a really good point. When it comes to relationships now, is that something to consider when you're in a relationship, how you naturally think about money and how that can affect your relationship?
Well, it is, because obviously, for example, with me being a maverick, and my husband is primarily a nurturer, then it's like he sees things very different, and he is way more risk averse than I am, right? So I have to appreciate, again, how to handle it in a way that it feels good to him, but I'm still getting my way.
Gotcha. So it struck me how important it is to understand where your natural tendencies lie, and then just manage them and manage the relationships around those.
Right. Like, for example, I was working with that couple I was telling you about, and he was a maverick. Well, for her maverick was like way down, like almost at the bottom. I think it was number 7, right? But they had other ones that were similar. And so they were both accumulators. So they were both frugal. So there was a similarity, right? So that was a great thing. So by just really working with the differences, it helped to alleviate, it really helped them to see where there could be friction, there could be possible conflict, and then where they really needed to be understanding and supportive of their mate in how they see money. So it was it's a huge eye opener, right?
Gotcha. Fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Brilliant. I'm going to have to do some more research into this area.
Okay.
And so, Jan, a lot of your courses can be done online as well, or does it always face-to-face or, Zoom consultations and things like that?
My Sell Like a Queen program, which will be relaunched again, it's a 10-week program in September. It can be done, it's all prepared. However, I also do one-on-one coaching, plus I do group coaching. The course I'm teaching right now, it's very much, I'm there, I'm teaching, because these were women who have been really hit hard by the pandemic. And so there was lots of nurturing that had to come to the forefront. And I think every single one of them has nurture in their top 3. So there was, that community feel of no one being left alone, no one being left behind was super important. And so I decided to do it that way. And we've just had such a good time. And so, it just depends. So yes, you can, I've got things that you can do, but I think right now, what people are really looking for is that personal touch, that connection, that I've got a question, who's going to answer it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that right now the primary focus is on that personal connection so that we can really move ahead.
Definitely. And I agree. Everything I do, everything's so technologically based, everything's so driven by apps and this and that. And if I just have a simple question, for the life of me, I can't find a phone number or an email address or a support link just to help me answer a question. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to be another week before I work out what's going on here, before I get a response. It's exhausting.
I know. Yeah. And that's what, I think that, again, you can get just about anything for free right now. I mean, you could learn to do anything from, knit to learn Russian for free. I mean, there is probably nothing that you could not find right now that you could not learn for free. But just because you can learn it for free doesn't mean that it's going to be in your best interest, because like you say, if you get stuck or you have a question, or how do I apply that to me personally, right?
Exactly. That's the kicker there.
Yeah. And that's what I love to do. I mean, I'm passionate about empowering these women to move forward in their lives. So, they got a question, they email me, I answer it. I answered on a Facebook Live. I answered on a coaching session. I pick up the phone and say, hey, it's Jan here. You asked a question and I just wanted to take 5 minutes and just give you the right answer and make sure I had it right. Who does that? I mean, certainly nobody who's doing it for free, right?
If I'm in the shop and I'm about to buy something, can I say, Jan, this is it's a deal. Should I buy it or not?
Well, it depends if you're an accumulator. We'll just have to see there, Darren.
Fantastic. I mean, and do you do some speaking? Have you been doing some keynote speaking and conferences and workshops around all this stuff, just out of interest?
I'm a speaker at the Rise Summit, the virtual summit that's happening August 6th to 8th. So yes, I'm a speaker on how all about the six figure is a new minimum wage. And so, yeah, obviously the whole speaking thing has closed down, but I've certainly been a guest on many, many podcasts. You're my second one today.
Hey.
And so just trying to get the word out. I mean, I was semi-retired for 9 years, Darren, and I was just living this idyllic life, watching the deer and loving up my cats and gardening. And then this thing came out of my mouth, 6 figures is the new minimum wage. And that was kind of like, oh, I guess, this is it. And I'm now.
And because you're a maverick, you couldn't sit still. You had to do something.
Oh, heavens, no. That was a challenge.
You said, all right, let's go.
Sorry, what was that?
You said, all right, let's go. New business.
Absolutely. Yep. I've got my racehorses and I'm off I'm building my empire. I'm the ruler, right?
Great. I love it. It's such a great story and such a great subject. And I think it'll be a fascinating workshop or keynote as well for anybody, because there's so much we can all learn, men and women, from these concepts.
Yeah, there's no end of things to do with this. I mean, there's in any area of business. I mean, that's the thing is I've got 40 years. I mean, that's 4 decades of experience. And I have done everything from being president of a network marketing company to have businesses in the automotive industry. Yeah. I have owned a franchise. I mean, I have done so many things. Like, really, it's amazing. Sometimes when I look back, I think, wow. So there's not much that someone can throw at me from a business point of view that I'm not familiar with, or I can't come up with an answer, right?
Exactly. Fantastic. Well, Jan, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, the best way is to go do the assessment. Like, that would be fabulous. So it's 8. So the number 8, money, archetypes. Okay, .com. So 8moneyarchetypes.com.
So that's the link to the assessment, isn't it?
That's the link to the assessments. Once you do the assessment, I get a copy, you get a copy, and you have an opportunity to book some time with me. So, do that. And you're on LinkedIn as well? I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I think your website's being revamped at the moment. Is that right? No, I'm actually selllikeaqueen.com sellikeaqueen.com, which is, my website. So you can go there too.
Awesome. So I'll make sure that I put all those links in the notes for everybody. But it's been an absolute pleasure. I think this is a fascinating subject. And one thing that I always ask everybody to do at the end of the show is leave us with a tip or two, men and women, or just women, up to you, about how to think about money. What can we do to put in place with our thinking that's going to help us with our spending and our our journey along the way when it comes to money.
You know what, Darren, I think that what comes to my mind and heart is that having seen how most of the world lives, someone said, if you live in a first, or developed country, when our back is up against the wall, it's a silk curtain.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that really hit me because it's so true. And so I believe that when we live in such prosperity and such abundance and such opportunity, I really feel like it's our responsibility. Like I really do in my heart, that to go and make that money so that I can make the difference I'm here to make. Right. And so, I encourage people to not just think about, okay, I got to pay off my mortgage. I got to do this. I got to do that. There is such a huge world out there that, such a small amount of money. We help support a family right now in rural El Salvador. And literally, Darren, with just $100 US a month, we have changed that family's lives. Their kids are graduating from school. They're eating well. They're top of the class. They're going to go on to post-secondary education. We have potentially, absolutely, broken that poverty cycle for them for what, $1,200 US? Like that's nothing in the big scheme of things. Yeah. That's the kind of potential we have. And I think people sometimes minimize the impact they can have. And I say, you can make a huge difference. But you've got to make the money, right?
Gotcha. You got to make the money, and you have to know where you're spending your money so that you can actually save a little to do those good things.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Fantastic, Jan. Well, that's been absolutely fascinating. I'm going to go and link and do that that test myself. So you're going to get a little email from me.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being on the show this morning and your afternoon.
Well, thank you for having me, Darren. It was awesome.
Absolute pleasure. And for everybody out there, I hope you learned a hell of a lot. And if you want to learn some more, jump on all those links that I'm going to put in there for Jan. And we hope everybody had a very, very interesting podcast. I hope you have a fantastic day, fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next week for some more episodes. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.